The most recent posting
A hit list posted on Instagram that's getting a lot of attention.
They're featuring a clown. He's a pretty scary looking clown.
It's a creepy looking clown and no one is laughing. Certainly not school districts, including Elk Grove Unified, that sent out 75,000 emails today.
We went ahead and sent actually a message from the superintendent to all staff and to all parents throughout the district, letting them know we are aware of the situation, we are monitoring the situation.
Security patrols have been beefed up today at schools across the district. Elk Grove High School is one of more than half a dozen schools targeted by pranksters today in Northern California, ranging from Modesto to Fairfield.
The clown said, I'm gonna cut your throat.
The creepy clown pictures have also been frightening students at Fairfield High.
Especially since they're coming to Fairfield High, saying that they're either going to kill or kidnap people, and specifically actually terrifies me because I have friends.
The scary pictures have been showing up from coast to coast.
I'm just freaking out because I'm going all over Instagram and all I see is, oh, clowns, 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 you know? How does something like this go worldwide?
School district officials have been monitoring the pictures and they've contacted law enforcement.
Michigan is dealing with yet another crisis. Health officials say the city is fighting an outbreak of a highly contagious stomach illness. It's called shigellosis, and it's not pleasant. People infected with the bacteria can have diarrhea, fever, and stomach cramps. And officials say it's spreading like wildfire in Flint because residents are refusing to wash their hands. Flint residents are still wary of the city's water a year after experts found elevated levels of lead in the supply. And that's convinced many people to forego some basic hygiene practices, even though the federal government has declared the water safe when filtered. The county health director told CNN people aren't bathing because they're scared. Some people have mentioned that they're not going to expose their children to the water again.
Acute flaccid myelitis, or AFM, is a mysterious muscle weakness similar to polio that appears to be on the rise this year. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reported on Monday that as of August 2016, there have been 50 cases of confirmed AFM. The cases range across 24 states. The number is nearly double over 2015, when 21 cases for the whole year were reported. AFM has been linked to a strain of enterovirus that's now circulating again. Some doctors are warning this could be the same mysterious polio-like illness detected in 2014 that paralyzed 120 children.
Mama, you're gonna go to hell.
Yep, you heard that right. Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte just told President Obama to go to hell. Apparently, international uproar and a presidential snub weren't enough to teach Duterte to keep his mouth shut. Duterte told Obama to go to that fiery place on Tuesday. Why? Well, like pretty much every other time Duterte has insulted an international leader, and there are many, it was for criticizing his self-proclaimed war on drugs. Duterte has called for the killings of drug dealers and addicts in his country. Over 3,000 people have reportedly been killed by police and vigilantes since Duterte took office in June.
They say it's the epidemic that no one talks about. But in this tiny community, Pozo Verde in eastern Venezuela, it is clear for all to see. The jaundiced complexion, the weariness, those telltale symptoms of malaria.
Sí, tengo las dos.
Inelis is currently suffering from both malaria and dengue at the same time. Robin says the mosquitoes are everywhere.
I wake up with bites all over my arms and legs.
There have been almost 10 times the normal number of malaria cases in this small settlement this year. There are two reasons why. One is there's been a surge in illegal gold mining in mosquito-infested areas nearby as people struggle to find new ways to earn a living. The other is that this country has almost no anti-malarial drugs, so the pool of infected people is growing.
Here in Caracas, there's an additional complication. The government has declined to release updated malaria statistics since early 2015.
Ciudad Universitaria in the area.
Experts like Dr. Jaime Torres, director of Venezuela's Institute of Tropical Medicine, are dealing with this crisis with only semi-official information.
this very year, we have close to 150,000 cases, which is more than we ever had before we had the control program of malaria.
But without government figures, how do you know how serious a problem it is?
Okay, that figure that I mentioned is a government figure. It's just that it's not publicized officially.
Maybe because it's all too depressing. In the 1960s, following intense eradication efforts, Venezuela was officially declared malaria-free by the World Health Organization. Now it risks exporting the disease to its neighbors.
Venezuela's economic crisis is killing dogs, too. Skinny and desperate, they root in the trash for even a small morsel of overlooked food. They are bedraggled, their rib cages and hip bones show through taut skin. On the street, left to fend for themselves, they snap at each other, trying desperately to survive in the cruel world which has forsaken them. Pet owners in the country, which is facing a deep economic recession that continues to spiral out of control, cannot afford to care for their beloved animals.
Pictures are hard to look at. Images of Sudanese civilians bearing wounds from what are alleged chemical attacks.
People consistently described that their skin would sort of harden and actually fall off in large chunks. People would begin to cough, they would begin to vomit, they had diarrhea, they began to tear from their eyes. Some people actually lost their sight.
Human rights group Amnesty International says it is proof the Sudanese government is using chemical attacks on its own people, killing as many as 250. The findings are from an 8-month investigation based on 200 interviews and satellite imagery. Amnesty believes there have been at least 30 such chemical attacks since January in Darfur's central Jebel Mara region. Sudan's government calls the accusations false and unfounded. Darfur has been torn apart by a brutal civil war for more than a decade after 2 rebel groups rose up against the government, accusing it of neglect. The government quickly crushed the revolt, but since 2013, fighting has flared again among government troops and their supporters and rebel groups. The United Nations estimates the conflict has killed more than 300,000 and displaced more than 2.5 million.
Ceasefire brokered by the U.S. and Russia took effect on September 12th. But just 1 week into the truce, the U.S. carried out airstrikes over Syrian government forces. A UN aid convoy was also bombed. A war of words between the U.S. and Russia has erupted in the aftermath. Each side blames the other for violating the ceasefire.
I don't think we should overreact so emotionally, and we should not make any hasty conclusions. We need to carry out investigations, very professional investigations.
I listened to my colleague from Russia, and I sort of felt a little bit like they're sort of in a parallel universe here.
The UN Security Council held an emergency meeting on September 25th as tensions escalated in Aleppo. After the talks, the U.S. ambassador to the UN accused Moscow of irresponsible military action and lying.
When Russia is espousing fiction, we have to call that out. What Russia is sponsoring and doing is not counterterrorism, it is barbarism.
Now there are several hundred organizations that are being armed, and Syria is always experiencing indiscriminate bombardments. It's impossible to achieve peace under such circumstances.
Just 3 days later, the U.S. warned that Russian actions in the region could trigger more terrorist activity. But Russia fought back, calling Washington's rhetoric irresponsible and dangerous.
Extremist groups will continue to exploit the vacuums that are there in Syria to expand their operations, which will include, no question, attacks against Russian interests, perhaps even Russian cities. And Russia will continue to send troops home in body bags.
They say terrorists are taking actions, but who on earth are they talking about? The moderate opposition forces sponsored by the U.S.? We only heard a call to action in this speech, an order to the terrorists to take more action.
What's happening in Syria is tragic, and it is deeply concerning, and it is something that the Russians have been complicit in for a year now.
The U.S. Department of State announced Monday that talks with Russia about a ceasefire in Syria will be suspended. A State Department spokesman went on to say the decision was not taken lightly. He cited both the Russian and Syrian governments' intensified military campaigns, especially in Aleppo, which have led to massive civilian casualties. Russian authorities responded by criticizing the U.S. decision. Russia claims its involvement in the peace talks is the only way to launch a stable peace process in Syria. But Moscow had another announcement to make Monday. Russia is suspending an arms reduction agreement it had with the U.S. to dispose of 34 tons of weapons-grade plutonium. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said in a statement, "Our decision is a signal to Washington that it cannot use the language of force, sanctions, and ultimatums with Russia."
Turkey suspended thousands of police officers, detained almost 36 members of the Air Force, and shut down a TV station on Tuesday. Ankara's move came hours after Deputy Prime Minister Numan Kurtulmus announced a 90-day extension to the state of emergency declared in response to July's failed coup attempt. 13,000 police officers, 5% of the country's police force, have been suspended over suspected links to Fethullah Gulen. The U.S.-based cleric is accused of orchestrating the coup to overthrow the government. Authorities have also detained 33 Air Force officers and taken TV station IMC off air over accusations it was spreading terrorist propaganda.
The scene of absolutely frenzied activity, another site where the floodwaters just rushed down here and washed away. Here, 700 homes. There are 4,500 soldiers alone in this area, and if you just look down below us, you can also see not just cadets running with earth to make bricks, but local school children who've just finished school and are coming here to help. Just a short time ago, I talked to 2 school children aged 13 and 14, both of whom had lost both their parents in this disaster. Just short of 100 people died in this area alone. And this is typical of what we've seen really for the last 3 days. Multiple communities along this river, all getting together to help. And over here you can see they're now rebuilding the bridge that we're standing on, which again was swept away by this wall of water. The real problem here, and what they're essentially doing in trying to rebuild, they need to rebuild quickly because the winter is coming. It can be very, very harsh here. So they have a deadline. They've been given a deadline by North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un, and that is to rebuild the houses within 3 weeks by the end of the month. That means 3-story apartment buildings, 5-story apartment buildings, which probably explains how frenzied and exactly why this activity here is so frenetic.
And specifically actually terrifies me because I have friends.
The scary pictures have been showing up from coast to coast.
I'm just freaking out because I'm going all over Instagram and all I see is, oh, clowns, 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 you know? How does something like this go worldwide?
School district officials have been monitoring the pictures and they've contacted law enforcement.
Michigan is dealing with yet another crisis. Health officials say the city is fighting an outbreak of a highly contagious stomach illness. It's called shigellosis, and it's not pleasant. People infected with the bacteria can have diarrhea, fever, and stomach cramps. And officials say it's spreading like wildfire in Flint because residents are refusing to wash their hands. Flint residents are still
across the district. Elk Grove High School is one of more than half a dozen schools targeted by pranksters today in Northern California, ranging from Modesto to Fairfield.
The clown said, I'm gonna cut your throat.
The creepy clown pictures have also been frightening students at Fairfield High.
Especially since they're coming to Fairfield High, saying that they're either going to kill or kidnap people.
It's a creepy-looking clown, and no one is laughing. Certainly not school districts, including Elk Grove Unified, that sent out 75,000 emails today.
We went ahead and sent actually a message from the superintendent to all staff and to all parents throughout the district, letting them know we are aware of the situation, we are monitoring the situation.
Security patrols have been beefed up today at schools.
The most recent posting that
A hit list posted on Instagram that's getting a lot of attention.
they're featuring a clown. He's a pretty scary looking clown.